So who am I? I am the former director of revenue at Exceptional. We were a developer tools SaaS company. We got acquired by Rackspace in 2013. So basically, we built software for software developers. Really fun, as you can imagine. It was like a very, very technical growth challenge. I also co-authored a book called Traction, as Lloyd said. And so how many of you, just to get a sense of the room, how many of you guys run your own startups or are responsible for marketing right now? Cool. All right. Good work. How many of you have heard of or read Traction? Okay. So maybe I should reevaluate the whole bestseller thing. It's all like 50 of you. But we moved like 35,000 copies at this point. We're republishing it in October. But basically, the book is like what I wish I had when I got into entrepreneurship and startups. Can we go to the next one? So basically, when I was starting out, like I read the Lean Startup. I did everything that people said you were supposed to do. Like got first customers, got revenue before we built a product. We interviewed a shit ton of people for my first startup, and like we did all these things right. But what happened is like we couldn't get traction. And today, in a world where like literally 1,200 startups are launching every year from accelerators, incubators, and the like. The hard part is no longer like, can you build a product as a startup? The hard part is like, can you get traction? And so we said, most startups fail. They don't fail because they can't build a product. They're failing because they can't get traction. And so my first one did. That logo is super washed out, but that's like the logo of my first failed startup. It was basically we built a software tool that matched roommates based on personality. We had revenue, we had investors, we had like a team, we did everything, and then we died. And the reason that we died is because we couldn't get traction. And like, let me tell you, it fucking sucks when your startup dies. Like, it's fucking awful. And it is not fun whatsoever. And so you all seem like really nice people. That's not just a Canadian stereotype. Like, I've talked to a couple of you. So you seem like nice people, and I don't want this horrible, horrible thing to happen to you. So we couldn't get traction. We tried everything. We tried sales calls. We threw a bunch of shit at the wall. We did 4 blog posts. We tried some tweeting or social media, growth hacking. We tried sales. We went to conferences. And we just did everything in a really unsystematic way that didn't end up working. And so we died. The most important thing in today's day and age is traction. Traction trumps everything. Paul Graham, the guy that started Y Combinator, has said similar things like a startup is defined by growth, especially today. If you're looking to raise money, if you're looking to get acquired, or just build a big company, everything that you do is determined by how much traction you have. You can have the most amazing product in the world, and unless it's curing cancer, you need to have traction to go with it in order to raise your next round, hit profitability, or go through an acquisition. So you need a traction strategy. This is something that Mark Andreessen, the founder of Andreessen Horowitz and the guy that started Netscape, said is the number one reason they pass on entrepreneurs they would otherwise like to back is because they focus on product to the exclusion of everything else. This means that Mark Andreessen, who is one of the smartest people in the Valley, certainly one of the smartest people in startups and tech that there is seeing entrepreneurs that he likes. He's impressed with their idea, their vision, but they're not focusing on traction, and so he passes. That's a tragedy. Next slide. So, God, this is super washed out. I chose a terrible font. Sorry, guys. So basically, we found after, through the process of writing the book, through our own experiences and whatnot, we talked to over 40 founders. Collectively, they've started companies with a market cap north of $10 billion. And we found that there are basically 19 different channels, 19 different ways that startups acquire customers. I wish you could see them, but just trust me, they're up there, and it's not just numbers. But basically, we saw if you are starting a startup and you are growing, there are 19 different ways through which you're going to acquire customers. I don't even know who's doing my slides right now. This is awesome. So Peter Thiel, another guy, co-founder of PayPal, first investor in Facebook, said a very similar thing. if you can get even one distribution channel working for your business, you have a great business. The goal in any startup is to achieve growth, get traction, and to do that, you need to find one of these 19 channels that's working. So with so many channels, how do you figure out what channel to use? Where do you start? 19's it's a fuck ton. And so what we say is after doing this process of exploration, interviewing all these people, doing a bunch of research, we found that a lot of these successful companies implemented and went through a very similar process to figure out what channels made sense for their business. Kind of like the guys we're just talking about up here for the panel. They went through this process of figuring out, of testing, experimenting, and figuring out what actually worked to move the needle in a meaningful way. We call this, in our book, the bullseye framework, but it's basically a process which I'm going to tell you guys about now. So the first step is brainstorming. This sounds so stupid. I kind of hate having this slide up there. Everyone's like, wow, this is the stupidest fluffy slide in the world. But the reason it's up there is because if you can acquire customers in a way that your competitors aren't, it's a huge competitive advantage. You guys are familiar with Dropbox, I assume. Everyone has to be, right? So we're at a tech conference. Okay, cool. Saw a couple heads nodding. But basically, Dropbox was not the first company that did file storage and file uploading and management. However, they were the first company that added a referral program to uploading and managing your files. Now, where all of the other file storage companies were thinking can we do affiliate programs? Can we do partnerships? Can we do paid acquisition and all these other things to acquire customers? Dropbox was the only one that kind of went a different way and said, we're going to test out this viral program. And in return, this viral program has gotten them tens of millions of users, all because they thought what are some channels that our competition isn't using that we can use and grow way faster than them? This is just hugely undervalued, I think. At Airbrake, you can go to the next slide too. But at Airbrake, which is the company I was running growth for, we went through a similar process. We were selling to developers. We found that no other developer tools companies effectively were doing inside sales to their customers. No one at our size was doing inside sales. So we started testing people. We started calling people, seeing if they would upgrade, seeing if they would share with their friends, and we saw that it worked. So we quickly ramped from 2 to 5 salespeople and did a ton of experimentation to see can we really scale this channel? And I'll get more into how we scaled that in 2 steps. So the next step, after you've brainstormed, you have all of these ideas of things you can do with these 19 channels. Next thing you want to do is you want to prioritize them. So basically, when you have all these ideas, 19 channels is a lot. You got to figure out where to start. The ways you want to prioritize all these incredible ideas you have is you want to look for what is easy to test, what is a really low investment way that you can test whatever ideas you have. For example, if you wanted to change copy on your homepage, super low investment. You can run that experiment in a day. But on the other hand, potential impact for changing copy on your homepage is probably not super massive, probably less than 50% upside. On the other hand, doing something like rebuilding your onboarding flow, which we did at Airbrake, took a ton of investment. It was not easy to test at all, took a lot of development and design resources. But when we finally did it, we more than 3x'd our activation rate, which was just a massive win for our business. And so you want to see, is it easy to test? What is the potential impact? If the test goes well, how well, or how will it meaningfully change our business? And the last thing is, if we run this test, are there lessons we can learn from this test that we can apply to other products or other segments of the business? To bring back to the copy segment, or the copy example, if you're testing messaging towards a certain customer persona, say salespeople at mid-level companies, if you run a test and you see people respond to certain messaging better, then you may want to roll that copy and that messaging out across your blog, social media, other pages, about pages, stuff like this. So this is another thing that we did that was a huge win for us. So the next step, oh, okay, I got it. Sorry about that. This is way better. Yeah, so the next step, after you've tested, you're going to have some tests that work, some that don't, as the guys were just saying. Totally normal. Once you find something that works, you want to double down. This is where a lot of people actually kind of fall off. Like, you'll run a successful Facebook ad campaign. You're like, great, we did it. We ran a successful campaign. And then you go on and do like content marketing or something. In reality, like, you want to see if something is working, like, do more of it and more of it and more of it until it's tapped out and just not working anymore. You know, like I said, we really scaled our sales channel within Airbrake. And like, one thing that we saw was working, which still blows my mind, is like, if you give, we would email our customers who signed up and we said, hey, if you guys install our app within 7 days, we're going to send you an Airbrake t-shirt. They were cool t-shirts, but like, it always surprised me that these developers who made $150,000 a year would like drop everything they were doing to install our shit just to get like a $4 t-shirt by Friday. It like blew my mind, but it works. And so we did this. We went from 2 to 5 salespeople. We tested calling our customers. We tested these sorts of t-shirt offers. We tested these upgrade levers. And it turns out sales was a really significant chunk of our revenue by the time we got acquired. So to basically wrap up, like, you need to give traction attention. One thing that we saw, especially among early stage companies, is there's this tendency for companies, especially in like small teams, to spend 80, 90% of their time on product and 10 to 20% of their time getting traction. We think this is a huge problem. And what happens oftentimes is people build a product and they launch to crickets and it goes nowhere. If you believe and you think that, like, you know, if you believe me when I say there are thousands of products launching every year that are going after the same customers you are, you know, and the main reason that startups are failing today is not because they can't build a product, but because they can't get traction. It follows that you should be spending as much time on traction as you should on product. And so this is kind of what we talk about in the book, and like, this is what I'm doing now as I'm starting my next company, is we're trying to build the groundwork and get traction early on while also building the product in tandem. So in closing, there are 2 bullet points, which you can't see, but I hope you all can see crush it, which I hope you guys do. I'm Justin Mayer at JW Mayers on Twitter. Let me know if you have any questions, thoughts. Would love to help you guys out. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone has any questions for Justin? Calv, come on up here. Calv from Brewhouse. Brewhouse, Calv.
Yeah, that's Brewhouse, not Bluehouse. Thank you for the talk. Amazing book. A question, how much time should people spend on the individual channels to really understand whether it's working or not?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So he said, how much time should people spend on individual channels? I don't necessarily think you should spend like a certain amount of time on individual channels, but I'm saying when you go through the brainstorm process, you probably have like 1 or 2 ideas per channel where you say, like, this seems really promising. Like Facebook ads, like, can we test this sort of messaging and this sort of targeting? And then once you run that test, you can say, like, okay, this seems promising and we could probably optimize it, or like, this was a total flop, let's move on. So it really depends. Like, some channels, like business development, probably is going to take several weeks to test out, a lot of conversations, a lot of talking to advisors and mentors and stuff. Others like Facebook, AdWords, and the like, you can probably test in 3 to 5 days. You know, so it's really channel dependent.
Hi, I'm trying to apply the framework actually as we speak. Thanks for the book, it's awesome. I have a question though. Those channels you just mentioned, Google, AdWords, Facebook, it takes a little while to be able to test that channel because there's optimization. So how do you test channels that require optimization? Because the results you're getting in day 1 could be totally different than the results you'll be getting after you're smarter, right?
Great question. So basically what we've seen is, like, you run a test and you want to see, like, kind of like Aaron said earlier, are the metrics like even inching in the right direction? Like, he launched a test with StumbleUpon. It wasn't like doubling the growth until 3 months after, but before then there were signs that were promising. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you're testing a channel and you see that it's just not working at all, like everything's falling flat, like, okay, like, move on to the next thing. But if there are even inklings, like especially with Facebook ads, where you could say, like, you know, we're within 30% of having a profitable Facebook campaign, like, you can kind of assume that you'll be able to improve through optimizations like 30 to 50% on your spend. And so there are ways basically where you're like, is this even promising? And then once you say yes, then you start moving into like, can we optimize this? Can we like test different things within Facebook ads, test new targeting and stuff like that? Does that answer? Okay. Anything else?
All right, thanks, Justin. And give it up for Justin Maris of Traction Book.